Oh, hi, this is Chandra Easton here. I thought I'd have a bit of a chat about the solar eclipse that's coming up. I'm from starastrologyhealing.com, esoteric astrologer. This will be a talk on the political ramifications of the upcoming solar eclipse, which we can expect on the 21st of August. That's a Monday, 2017. It's about 3 weeks away. Eclipses are very interesting because they shine a spotlight upon certain events, certain places, certain people. They don't impact us individually, they impact groups. The nature of an eclipse is that the impact or the focus or the spotlight sits there for 3 years from the time of the eclipse. So it doesn't all happen on the day of the eclipse, but it talks about the 3-year period that comes afterwards. This is a fixed eclipse in the sun. The sun and the moon are in the 29th degree of Leo. They fall exactly conjunct 28 degrees and 52 minutes into the sign of Leo. Because Leo's a fixed sign, it means that the impact of the eclipse will be strong and felt in a powerful way and a sustained way over the 3-year period. Okay, so the interesting thing about the 29th degree of Leo is that this is a degree associated with the fixed star Regulus. Now Regulus is a royal star known by the Persians in the ancient days as the Watcher of the North, and it holds within it holy energies and powerful spiritual energies. So when powerful spiritual energies irradiate Earth through an eclipse, then we can expect that all that which is the opposite of this spiritual energy, the energy of love and compassion, will arise to be healed and to be cleansed. So the opposite of this really is separation and hatred and selfishness and materialism. And because the fixed star Regulus has got a connection with royalty, then those who, in our modern world, you could say rock stars are royalty or politicians are royalty, and occasionally we do have royal figures like the British Queen and so on. Okay, now with regard to eclipses, there's a couple of things that happen. One is that the place where the eclipse travels across, the shadow, that is the shadow of the moon, the shadow that falls upon the earth from the eclipse falls on a particular place, a particular continent. In this case it's North America. And the movement of this eclipse across the horizon, it spreads from the west coast and travels across through the entire continent of North America is under what we call the path of Umbra. So the eclipse can be seen from the entire continent of North America. That's the region where it's focused, as well as countries that are governed by a Leo energy. So we could expect political issues with the royalty of North America to come to the fore. Now, we don't have royalty, but we do have a Trump dynasty who are ensconced within the Oval Office. We have President Trump, we have his cohorts, his cronies, his daughter, his son-in-law. He is surrounded by power brokers, and he indeed is a power broker. So here we have a focus upon the Trump dynasty and its impact on North America, and people from the west coast to the east coast, the entire country will be affected. And because of the conjunction with Regulus, then we would expect royal behaviour. We would expect behaviour that is good for the whole, behaviour that comes from the heart. Now, the interesting thing about the sign of Leo is that when it's used esoterically, then it's full of love and compassion. But when the sign of Leo is used from the lower vibration, from the ego's perspective, then it's all about power and control. And so the question here is, how's it going in North America? How are the ordinary people in North America feeling the effects of the Trump dynasty and the Trump presidency? Are they feeling the compassion? Are they feeling the care and concern for themselves as citizens? Or are they feeling like pawns in a game, pieces on a chessboard being moved around for the benefit of the elite, for the benefit of the king, in this case you'd say Trump, or his entourage? That's the $6 million question. The other thing that's happening with the eclipse is that not only do we have the sun and the moon sitting with the North Node, which are always there in any eclipse, but we also have the planet Mars in Leo. Now Mars is a very... it's associated with war, it's associated with assertion, getting one's own way, bullying, dictatorial manifestations. And when all of those issues have been redeemed out of the personality, well, then it's associated with courage and with compassion. Yes, so really we do have to ask the question, how elevated are the energies? Are the energies coming from the heart, or are they coming from self-interest and self-serving? Where are the policies of the Trump dynasty and the Trump presidency being motivated from? Is the energy coming from the lower vibration of Mars for the ego, or is it coming from a more altruistic? And it's difficult to find altruistic policies coming out of North America. The central point of the eclipse is very close to St. Louis. It's between St. Louis and Nashville, right in the heartland of, I think it's Missouri. Yeah, so the path of Umbra, it spreads crosses Kansas City, St. Louis, Nashville, and going from sort of west to east and sort of north to south. Yes, the exact time for the eclipse is 1:30 p.m. Central Daylight Time in St. Louis, Missouri, and you'd have to calculate that for whereabouts you are, and that's on the 21st of August. Okay, so obviously because of this very strong Martian focus and this need for there to be royalty, but concern associated with whether or not the regal energy or the presidential powers are being handled in a presidential way, I decided to have a look at the relationship between the eclipse and Donald Trump's chart. I'd like to say also that Regulus is an interesting fixed star, and the flip side of Regulus is that if the person who holds the power or the kingship or the presidential position makes decisions out of revenge, then they literally fall off of their pedestal. So there can be a very high rise to success and a very rapid fall off the pedestal if the energy of revenge is used. And so that's the question to keep in mind when we look at the policies that are happening in North America. Any of the policies, the decisions that are coming out of North America, are they based on revenge? I take the two charts and I put them together. This is Donald Trump's chart and the total solar eclipse for the 21st of August. What I notice is the eclipse falls exactly conjunct Donald Trump's ascendant. And the ascendant is the point at which his soul would wish him to rise into greater light, greater compassion, greater humanity. And he has in exactly that same position within a couple of degrees, in the 27th degree. He has the planet Mars there also. So what we have here is a very combustible energy focused around the correct use of power and how it impacts the correct use of power by Donald Trump while he sits in the role of president and also surrounded by his Trump dynasty, and how that plays out upon the North American people and indeed upon the world. Remembering that any decisions, any policies that are made based on revenge will cause the crown to slip and him to fall off the throne. Those who rise can also fall. Okay, I'm continuing to look here, and before I go on to look at the next chart, I just will talk a little bit about the if I can find it, the list of countries that are governed by the sign of Leo. And because not only is the eclipse potent in North America, but it's also potent in places governed by the sign of Leo. Okay, so in North America we're particularly talking about Oregon, Northern California, Western Canada, Missouri. Now that's where the path of Umbra just went through, the Hawaiian Islands, Alaska, Florida and Washington. So those particular areas of North America are under the spotlight. But North America is just one facet of it. In terms of countries governed by the sign of Leo, well, in Europe I immediately think about the Vatican. So I would expect that there would be a spotlight being shone upon the Vatican over the next 3 years. And I know that brings to mind for me the fact that we have the third most eminent cardinal in the Vatican who is been brought before the courts for sex offences, historical sex charges, I think they refer to them as. So that puts the Vatican under the spotlight, but also the warm countries, Greece, Romania, Sicily, France, Czech Republic, these are all governed by the sign of Leo. And as I say that, what that brings to mind for me is that this is where the refugees are pouring into Europe out of the Middle East and into the warm countries initially. So there's a bit of focus on the countries where the refugees out of the Middle East, out of Syria and out of Africa are first arriving. There's a specific focus upon the Vatican in terms of the correct use of royal power and royal energy. There's those places I mentioned in America, particularly Missouri, but those other places on the west coast and also the Hawaiian Islands. Within the Middle East, the whole Middle East is governed by the sign of Leo, and you could say that what's required to heal the issues in the Middle East is forgiveness and compassion, and what we have is a battle of wills and battles for power and control and supremacy, all focused around Jerusalem. Yes, so expect this to escalate over the next 3 years. Great Britain is also governed by the sign of Leo, and of course as I think about Great Britain I think about Brexit. Yes. And parts of Africa, specifically East Africa, are also governed by the sign of Leo. They are Leo countries. Yes. Okay, so I decided that I would then go and have a look at the Middle East and the charts for the founding of the nation of Israel and the chart for the founding of the Palestinian Liberation Organisation. So when I look at the chart for the state of Israel, the first thing I notice is that the planet of war, that's Mars, sits in the 28th degree of Leo. And the 28th degree of Leo is exactly the same degree where this eclipse is occurring. So really this is indicating that the likelihood of war in the Middle East over the next 3 years is almost inevitable. And I mean war beyond the current circumstances where we have a deadlock. We have a complete and utter deadlock going on. I think Netanyahu in the last week has had to back down and remove some of the security barriers that he had around the Temple Mount. But the issue is not over, not by a long shot. We have a great escalation over the next 3 years of the issues that are affecting Israel. And as I say that, it brings to mind a program that I was watching just last night actually, where they were talking about the daughter of President Trump, Ivanka Trump, and how she has a very significant role as a power behind the throne, and that she's clearly involved in the making of policies. And she has married into an Orthodox Jewish family and has some fairly right-wing views. So the issue as to whether or not the Trump family's religious affiliations provide extra stimulus for the making of policies in favour of Israel over Palestine. And really it's always been very difficult for the American government to find a middle line because of their very, very strong allegiance with with Israel. to the detriment of the peace in the Middle East. And in fact, President Trump has even commented on the day of his inauguration that his son-in-law, Jared, would be the person to fix the problems in the Middle East. So I shudder. Really, that's all I can say about it, is I shudder when I think about this and when I look at the eclipse that's falling at the end of Leo and how it's impacting America, how it's impacting the state of Israel. And then when I look at the chart of the PLO, the 28th degree of Leo is not represented there at all. However, when I put the chart of Israel and the PLO's chart together and form a composite chart, then I notice that there are two planets within 1 degree of the eclipse placement. This is Mercury and Venus. Now, Mercury and Venus sitting together in Leo in this composite chart indicate there's a certain amount of nationalistic pride, I think, on both sides of the fence, from the Palestinians and from the Israelis, that it's very difficult for one or the other to back down. I think it's also true to say that there are many people from both sides of the fence who are actively working for peace and striving to live in harmony with their neighbours. Yeah. In this composite chart, the planet Neptune sits obscured and hidden in the 12th house. The capacity for forgiveness and being able to move on, but from both sides of the fence, seems to have eluded the Palestinians and eluded the people of Israel. So peace and the forgiveness that goes with it are simply not there. And this particular, the relationship between Palestine and Israel is under the spotlight for the next 3 years in this most volatile of ways. Remembering, of course, that the fixed star Regulus is extremely sensitive to compassionate approach from the heart, where the best of the eclipse will come forward. Or conversely, if revenge is used in any way by Palestinian leadership, by the Israeli leadership, by the American leadership, by any of the allies, well, yes, then you could say that there will be all kinds of chaos and collapse. When I look at this composite chart, I see the difficult square between Chiron and Mars in Gemini, and I take that to be the inability for dialogue to work, or for peace talks to hold, or for the United Nations to have any enduring role in terms of the reconciliation of the centuries of harm that historically they sit with. Yes, let me just see what else I might want to talk about. As far as the eclipse goes, even though there are no planets in Leo in the PLO chart, the eclipse falls in the 12th house, in the house of karma for the PLO. So it's as if the warfare and the bloodshed and the angst that's been going on, it's almost like a wound that weeps, I think is the way to describe it. The wound that the PLO carries will weep and fester under this eclipse. And over the next 3 years, we're talking 2018, 2019 and half of 2020. Yes. I'm jumping around a little bit, but I also had a bit of a brief look at the relationship between the eclipse and the United States birth chart. And I've got that birth chart from the Declaration of Independence. That's the 4th of July, 1776. Now, whilst the American chart doesn't have any Leo in it, what it has is the moon in the 28th degree of Aquarius. And you could say that's the we the people statement and the values that are held very high as part of the American the strive for justice and for liberty for all. And so I think really what the eclipse is saying in reference to the American people and the American chart is how closely aligned is the modern life in 2017 to the principles that were outlined in that Declaration of Independence. So this is just a few areas to contemplate and to consider. The American politics, the review of the ordinary person in the street in America, of the Trump dynasty, the capacity of the President Trump to make decisions that are not based on revenge but are based on fair policy, decisions based for the good of the whole rather than cronyism or self-interest. In terms of the Middle East, the need to find effective ways of dealing with the crises of power and control and land. Clearly something new and different needs to emerge. Dialogue doesn't work, shows of strength don't work. This sort of push for security that's recently come out of Netanyahu's government is at boiling point. As well as that, I think the issue with the Vatican and the sexual scandals that are going on in the Vatican are also going to be brought up for clearing, for cleansing, for healing, remembering that if any decisions are based on revenge, in terms of, let's say, for instance, Cardinal Pell, then there could be great fall from grace. And unfortunately, it appears that the tide of the refugees out of Africa and the Middle East into the southern part of Europe continues unabated. Yeah. One of the other things in the total eclipse chart that is particularly difficult is that the eclipse forms a very tight square to Scorpio rising. And to me it's like a pulling apart it's a fragmentation of the nation and of the people. Yeah, just a fragmentation, a separation, and maybe that's the purpose for it. Separation between those who are willing to come from the heart versus those who would use power for any means. The very fabric of life in America is being pulled into the two camps, the service to others or the service to self. The fabric of life in the Middle East is exactly the same. Are the leaders focused upon service to the common good or service to the self? And I'd have to say the Vatican, the same. So watch this space, I think, is the best advice. Okay, this has been Chandra Easton. You can always connect to me if you're interested in your own